As a current Master of Theology student at Baylor University, I'm going to be explaining the book of Romans in very simple terminology. I used to read Romans like a weapon, and I didn't even realize it for a very long time. So it wasn't like a sword against them, but it was instead like a shield for me. And the scary part about all of that, Romans was written to heal a divided church, but I was using to justify division instead. If you've ever argued predestination versus free will, faith versus works, those Christians and then those people, this letter, the book of Romans, might confront you in the way that it challenged me. In the next few minutes, I want to give you a very simple mini seminary lesson on the book of Romans using very simple terminology. But Romans, we have to identify, it's a letter in a real setting, facing real issues and a real pastoral goal. And so if you stay till the end, I'll show you the conflict that Paul refuses to solve early, because the solution is the whole point. And so here's what happened to me. I grew up hearing Romans quoted like the final word in every debate. And slowly, I started to read Romans only to confirm what I already believed. And so when I would open up Romans, I usually wasn't really listening, I was hunting. Hunting for verses that made me right. And then I ran into this one line from Paul. God is bigger than my categories. God is bigger than all of my plans. And so Paul just ends up standing there in complete awe and shock. God's ways are unsearchable and unfathomable, Romans 11. And the point isn't to systematize the mystery, it's to stand in complete awe. Because awe produces worship together, but arrogance fractures the body. So what's happening in Rome? Rome is the empire's capital. It's crowded, it's tense, and it's layered with a lot of ethnicity and a lot of class divisions as well. The Christian movement there most likely began through Jewish believers who were connected to synagogues and the scriptures of Israel. They met in these house churches or these small communities. And then we see comes this political shock. In 49 CE, Emperor Claudius expels at least some of the Jews from Rome after disturbances connected, most likely, to conflict over Christos being proclaimed as Messiah. When Claudius eventually dies, and the edict, the law that expelled these Jews, finally fades away, the Jewish Christians return. But they come back to a church that's now predominantly Gentile. So you can see that tension starting to form now, right? Like, who's the real church now? Whose practices are normal? Whose freedom is faithful? And so for a long time, Romans was treated like Paul's timeless treatise, almost like the distilled essence of his whole theology. But Paul is writing with goals. We have to remember that. He knows people in Rome. Romans 16 shows connections like Priscilla and Aquila. He's addressing a situation where the church is at risk of becoming two churches. A strong group and a weak group, fighting over food practices and special days like the Sabbath. And the very important detail that we see in all of this, the strong aren't just Gentiles and the weak aren't just Jews. This is bigger than ethnicity. It's identity, piety, freedom, and contempt all clashing together. So here's the conflict that Paul finds himself in. How do you build one worshiping body out of people who have totally different instincts about holiness? Because one side says, well, if you're truly free in Christ, you'll stop obsessing over food and the calendar. And the other side says, well, if you're truly devoted to God, you won't treat holiness like it's optional. And here's what Paul sees under the surface: pride, triumphalism, a subtle belief that, oh, we replace them. Jew and Gentile stand on the same ground. Both are delivered from wrath and ultimately aligned with God's righteousness the same way, and that way is through Christ. Any priority the Jew had is not ontological. It's not this superiority of being. It was temporary in salvation history. And so Paul starts with Gentile idolatry. People can perceive God through creation, but refuse gratitude and turn to idols. And Paul's description of God's wrath is terrifying, because it's not always just like lightning bolts and the earth is shaking and the waves are crashing. Sometimes it's just God handing people over to the consequences of dishonor and ingratitude. Idolatry isn't just wrong worship. It reorganizes your whole moral framework. Moral disorder flows from worship disorder. And so then Paul turns, and the religious listener who was nodding along suddenly becomes the target. Because God shows no partiality. God doesn't pick and choose sides. Romans is designed to kill your superiority complex. So here's the debate that kind of messes with Christians and makes us fight and divide. Is justification just a legal declaration, imputed righteousness? Or does it include transformation, effective righteousness? A famous author known as De Silva points to, and I'm going to botch this name, Stolmacher, maybe I got it right, maybe I didn't, who says, Paul holds them together. Believers are accounted righteous and transformed by the Spirit. Justification isn't only like God tolerates you, it's reconciliation, it's a sense of restored relationship. It's a new life that actually changes how you love and how you live. And so Paul has to correct a misunderstanding that he sees. Grace does not sponsor sin. Grace demands a break with it. Baptism signifies death to sin, and new life in Christ. Walking in a newness of life. But then Romans 7 hits, and people argue about it forever. Is Romans 7 describing the believer's present struggle or the pre-Christian person? If Paul is still sold under sin as a believer, as we see in Romans 7:14, how does that fit with set free from sin in Romans 6:22? He's not giving you an excuse to stay stuck. He's explaining the human crisis. So the Spirit's deliverance in Romans 8 lands with complete and utter weight. Now, here's the conflict/resolution that Paul saves for the very, very end. Romans isn't written to create better debaters. It's written to create a multi-ethnic family where Jew and Gentile worship are one. And the only soil where that unity grows is humility, because everything is grounded in God's initiating kindness. From Him and through Him and unto Him are all things. So the church cannot say, oh, we are Christians, therefore we are better. Romans completely flips this ideology. It says, we are Christians, therefore we know we were rescued by mercy. We aren't better than any other person. If you've ever used theology to feel superior, you're not alone. I did too. And so this is why I'm obsessed with reading Romans in its historical setting, where you see Rome, Claudius, Emperor Claudius, the expulsion of the Jews, house churches, Jew-Gentile tension, because that's how you hear Paul's pastoral aim. And so here's your assignment for the next 7 days. Here's your homework. Do this. I want you to really do this and watch the transformation that happens in your soul. Before you read Romans, I want you to pray one sentence. Lord, don't let me use this to win. Let me use this to worship and to love. And then I want you to read Romans 14:1 through 15:13 with just one question in mind. Where am I tempted to despise or judge my brother or sister? If you do that honestly, Romans will begin to heal you. We'll catch you on the next one.